Disclaimer. This is mid-job. I forgot about this. So, let me say this message before you guys watch the video. If you do not have this exact or nearly identical spark plug socket, and when I say identical, I don't mean just a 14 socket with a swivel. I mean this identical tool. Ultra thin wall, 14 millimeter, 6-point socket, okay? If you don't have one of these, do not even attempt the job. You will never get the spark plugs out of this vehicle or any BMW inline 6-liter N54, N55, inline 6 3.0 without this tool. It's just not going to happen. Alright guys, we're going to cover spark plug replacement on an X5 35i. So anyways, this is going to be for the 6-cylinder platforms, both the twin turbo and non-turbo 6-cylinder platforms. So we're going to dive right into it. You do not need to be scared because it says BMW. It is just like working on everything else. So no need to fear just because of the emblem. This is very similar to a lot of other vehicles. Always a good idea to protect the paint. The process of replacing plugs on the 6-cylinder platforms of the M3, M5, X5, X3, all the 3 series and 5 series that have the 6-cylinder, this video is going to be nearly identical process for all of those models, okay? Now, first thing you do is we need access to the plugs, okay? Yes, there's garnishes. No, there's no special tricks. Just like every other manufacturer, you pull up on the left, pull up on the right, pop the engine cover off, set the engine cover out of the way somewhere. Next, you're going to find a foam pad, foam insulator pad over the top. You might also find what I just found, which is the fact that rodents have been in here. So we're gonna actually have to do some vacuuming as well. So I'm gonna take this foam pad and I'm gonna throw it in the garbage, okay? There's no need for that. Also, guys, your engine cover, you want my advice? Throw the engine cover in the garbage too. All it's for is looks, okay? The less heat you can hold over the top of the engine, the better off you are every day of the week. Alright, now this one I already popped open, okay? First things first, there's a tube, runs over the top. It's got little tabs on the side. Okay, so this gets seated on there, it gets pressed in. You need to grab a pliers or something where you can put pressure on the outside. See the little rib sections on it? Okay, it's got to be squeezed there and you got to work it up. Don't yank on it super hard. These are super easy to break. Okay, the other thing you're going to find is there is a connection right here where that hose goes on. Just pop it off. So literally hold the metal with one, well, grab the hose, hold it with one thumb, pop it out, okay? That's just going to give you easier access to move it. Now I usually take them, set them here, put them in a spot where you're not bending them under pressure, but so that they're out of the way. Okay, next thing, relatively easy guys, coils, we can already see the coils, which is a huge deal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, so see that? We can only see 4 of them, okay? So the rest continue on that way, okay? Now, with that being said, we're going to have to move this induction pipe for the turbo. So this pipe comes off. So we're going to put a little 7mm. We're going to take this one off. We're going to take this one off. I'm going to disconnect that sensor, pull this piece out of the way just so I have more room. I prefer it that way. This pipe though absolutely has to go. And once we get that out of the way, there's little Torx here. I believe it's a T30. I will confirm that in a minute. You're going to pull all that out, pull it out of the way, and then we're going to move on to the next step. These are 6mm, excuse me, 6mm, 6mm. Okay. I get them nice and loose so you're not fighting them. Same with this guy. You just got to get on it nice and square. Okay, we got a 6 and a 7. My apologies. Why they put a 7mm there and a 6 there, we'll never know. Okay, but anyways, since this clamp is loose, I'm going to take this and wiggle it. Don't get too aggressive, okay? Now once you can wiggle it, you know you're loose, okay? And then this has to come off of the airbox, because what we need to do is loosen this piece up so we can get this pipe out of the way. Now there's another clamp. Take you guys off the stand and show you. There is another clamp right there. That's going to have to be removed as well. That one is another 6, believe it or not a 7. So we're going to pull that and we're going to pull the induction pipe off. Gonna need a bit of extension. Okay. Like I said, there's put this somewhere where it's not going to be under tension. Obviously it was under tension a little right there. Set my tools out of the way. I'll just set this up here for right now. Now I got that clamp down here loose, okay? The other thing, if you guys can see that, is there's a connection here we're going to have to remove. Another way is you just pull these Torx and pull the whole sensor out. That's the other way you can do it. That is a least invasive way of removing this. That is the way that I actually prefer to do it, is just to take it out of the pipe. This is not a high pressure or forced induction pipe. This is the induction pipe for the turbos. So we don't need to worry about gaskets not sealing or stuff like that. Obviously you need to put this back together correctly, but less likely to have issues of the sort like that. Now this guy right here is also going to have to be disconnected. There's a little tab over the top of it that's going to have to come up, and then you slide the actual connector out. These are very, very fragile. Absolutely, you're going to need a small, fine point pick to accomplish that, okay? Don't try the screwdriver method of prying up. You're going to break the tab right off. Never going to be able to connect that connector back in. You're going to have to use glue. Not ideal, okay? Okay, right here, we got two little T25. Don't drop the screws. It's going to be very difficult if you do that. Okay, put the screws in a safe spot. Again, we're taking this out so we don't have to disconnect this right here. Now on this kind of stuff, I recommend using surgical pick tools. I'm a big fan of them because you're a lot less likely to break connectors due to how small these picks actually are. They're very, very small. They're not going to put too much tension in between the connector and break it off. So get a nice set of these if you work on German cars, okay? So now that the connector is disconnected, what we can do is wiggle this. And again, be gentle, okay? Now that our pipe is loose, we can also wiggle our pipe a little bit. Okay, so you're not going to be able to take it all the way out. That's one thing to kind of pay attention to. Now what we're going to have to do is pull this boot off. Okay, now that the boot is off, that gives us more freedom down here by this PCV. Okay, now we can pop it out, okay? So the PCV is now out, as you guys can see, okay? We got to be careful not to flex this hose too much. BMW loves this plastic and it loves to crack, okay? So be cautious about that. The next thing is down here, this charge pipe hasn't been off in a while, so it's going to be relatively difficult to wiggle it off. So you're going to have to use some finesse. I recommend holding the sensor back with your hand. Pop the charge pipe off and out. I say charge pipe, induction pipe. There's no boost going through here. It is simply air to the turbos. So we got the pipe off. We're going to take this, set it somewhere safe. Okay. Now we obviously have more room in here, but, and watch out for these, okay? These love to come out. They're for the engine cover, if you guys can see that. I'm going to stick it back in over here. Okay. Now we're going to work on the pipe further back. We're going to go ahead and remove this. So what we're going to do is lightly twist and wiggle. And sometimes, and I think it's the same on this model, you have to actually take the airbox off completely. So what we're going to do, these are, I believe, a T15, which is incorrect. They are they a T25? They are a T25. We're going to go ahead and pull these out. Okay, I see it's missing one right there, so we'll talk to him about that. Okay, now the box is loose. Now we should be able to separate these, which we did. Take the actual air box, place it somewhere safe. Filter, we can actually pull out at this point. That filter looks to be almost brand new, so we're not going to do anything with that. Okay, so this is that intermediate suction pipe we were talking about. This little clip here gets pushed in, if you guys can see that. So again, I use a pick. I push in the backside with a pick, put some pressure on it, start working the sensor side to side off. Don't get aggressive with it. You can break the sensor right out of it. So sometimes they like to be stubborn and don't like to come off. And so in that case, what I just end up doing is don't like get stuck, okay? Just pull the sensor out. Sometimes it's just easier that way. So we'll take this. Okay, now we're going to take this foam piece, okay, and the foam piece is wedged between this engine harness and the cylinder head, okay? So, sometimes you can remove the harness first, sometimes not so much. So, we'll go ahead, we'll pull this foam out. And this foam already has some existing tears, but BMW does this for kind of more or less noise dampening. Now if you guys can see here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. The hidden ones were 5 and 6. Are tucked back there, okay? So as you can imagine, there's some more stuff we're gonna have to move to gain access to the last 2 on the cylinder head. Okay, now part of that is gonna be removing this garnish up here because, like I said, we need to get straight at it. Now some of you guys might say, oh, I'm gonna sneak my tools in the back corner over there. Well, guess what? Sure. If you can make that work, go for it. But I am not the type of person that on a high-end car like this, I'm not going to risk fighting or bending plastic components or breaking connectors. So, as a result, we're going to be, and this has been off already, I can tell by how loose it is. We're going to pull this off and we're going to pull all this plastic up. If you guys can see that, we're going to pull that off. So I thought I was recording, I wasn't, but you take these tabs and you twist them about, it's like a little past 90, between 90 and 180. So basically you just lefty-loosey, they're 14 mils. Just twist them around slightly and then they're gonna pop up. And then you're gonna have, basically be able to lift it, move it around. Then what you need to do is you need to fish it around the actual hood strut, which takes a little bit of finesse, just like that. So you're going to take that off, you're going to set it somewhere safe. Okay, so now the box has that same style, okay, where you just twist them slightly, you don't twist them a ton. See this, how the box is kind of loose already? This is those bolts, they're not really bolts, they're just plastic connectors are what hold this box in. Now there is a sensor right here we're going to have to disconnect, if you guys can see that in the bottom corner here. It's just a push on the back of the connector, push on the release on the back, pull it off, just like so. So again, you're just on the top, which is right here, you're just pushing back on that connector to release it, okay? This is Pete. Hey. And the bolt out. Wow, that's huge. Now, as you can see, we have this tray. Okay, this tray is what I was trying to remove. Now, you guys can't see under here, but there's a couple Torx bits that we're going to have to pull. And then what's going to happen is when we remove this, the only thing left is the actual bar. right there, okay? So that's kind of what we're after, is we're gonna pull all that out. Now, you have a 12 and then torque sizes as well. I believe those torques, well, let me check quick. Those are gonna be the T25. Alright guys, it's Monday, I'm a little off. It's a 10 millimeter. Let me make that easier. 10 millimeter. Okay, we're gonna pull that bolt out. Okay. I forgot there's two. Again guys, it's been a little while since I've done one of these. Okay, two on the back side, very easy to see and identify. Wow, I'm struggling. All right, so now we got our piece off, set it somewhere safe. The way that I do it, I leave it like this. The harness has a, wow, look at this guys. This is why you gotta watch out who you're bringing your stuff to. This wasn't even locked on there. Okay, now it's locked on there. But over here, we have our harness connection, and it's a plastic connection up over, and you guys aren't even seeing what I'm talking about. It's a plastic connection right there where your camera is. We're gonna set this in the air box, okay? Now you see this, how it wiggles, but doesn't want to actually come anywhere. There is a way to release this, but usually what I do is I just pull the Torx out right here. So just zip that out, and then this whole bracket will kind of come off and move around. That's the easier way in my opinion. The less disconnections that you can do on German cars, the better off you are. And you guys, don't let this kind of stuff scare you. It's not as scary as it looks, okay? So we got this guy right here. All this does is it's rubber. It lays in place, as you can see. Okay? See this? So you can pull these out one by one. Now you have even more room to move the harness around, okay? Now there's some guys that like to keep disconnecting a ton of stuff and then, you know, move it way out of the way. Personally, I think that's a little overkill, okay? Now I always start in the back corner just because that's the most screwing around. And once you get those two done, you can start reassembly and then continue moving forward. But that's kind of gonna be up to you on how you wanna do it. So this obviously is what it looks like now. Okay, these two plugs back here get accessed with the harness being moved around. These two and these two, the only thing we did before was move some of the fascia stuff and the air intake. Now, because there's crap all over, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start by vacuuming all of this out of here. Then I'm going to kind of blow around the spark tube coils, because when you pull the coils, if a bunch of dust falls in, at that point when you pull the plug, dust's going to fall into the engine. Again, you guys know me that I do not want anything ever falling into engines, including dust, particles, whatever. So, that being said, just be smart about it. Now, literally, you find where the coil is sticking up a little bit higher, which is on the back side of the coil. Okay? You're going to take it, you're going to pull up. See what I just did? Now, as you pull up and you start pulling back, don't ream on it, be nice and careful, but just keep pulling. It's going to release the connector. Don't grab it by the wires, grab it by the connector, pull the connector the rest of the way off. It's a 3-prong tab, just like such, okay? Okay, now, at this point, you're gonna see that the coils, there's no bolts, and I'm gonna take you off the stand and show you that actually. Okay guys, so we're looking at that coil I just disconnected. You pull up on it to release the tab. Don't pull too hard, don't get too aggressive, okay? I usually like them in the resting position so we don't risk breaking them or doing anything crazy like that. Now, the other thing you're gonna see is there is no bolts that hold the coils down, okay? The coils fit in this little slot up there, okay? There's no actual like securement that's holding the coils in. The coils have a very tight fitment into the cylinder head itself through the valve cover. So what you need is a very high quality pair of pliers that's not going to put too much tension on this. You're going to grab it by the furthest outside points, all the way on the bottom here, all the way on the bottom over there. Make sure it's not putting excess pressure on the top. And then you're going to go like this. Wiggle the coil back and forth as you're pulling up. Once you get to a certain point of twisting, it's going to hop over this metal, these metal detents, and the coil is going to come out. And I'm going to give you guys an example here in just a second. Now, these are the style pliers that I use to retrieve the coils because I can grab underneath the actual grommet on the coil and then I can pull up this way without damaging it. So what I do, and you gotta watch out for wires and stuff like that, you come in here, you make sure there's no wires contacting you, you grab it on the side, you start twisting, and then the coil is going to pop, okay? Once the coil pops up, make sure you're clearing the wires. You're going to pull the coil up, okay? At this point, you're going to inspect the coil, okay? You're going to make sure no oil residues on it. Make sure it looks nice and healthy, okay? Now the other thing we didn't cover is this has to come off entirely, this little connector here. So with the harness moved into its rear position, it's relatively simple to pull off. What you're going to do is you're going to look, okay, there's little side tab connectors on these. See this right here? Down, up. So you're going to push down and you're going to pull the connector back. Okay. These connectors are built a little bit more rigidly. They're not as fragile. So then you can pull the metal tab back and remove the connector, place it down somewhere. Now, same with this one. You're going to push down, you're going to wiggle it. Sometimes they need a little bit of motivation to wiggle. Now obviously I'm not going to press with these pliers at all because they could crack the connector. But got that connector undone. Stick it around that post. Same thing, push the metal tabs back. Fish the connector out. Now the connector that goes on the rear, I'm in the habit of fishing up here so that I know that that was the rear connector. They are nearly identical, okay? Now there's one torque screw that holds this whole bracket in. So we're going to remove that. That is a T25. Just for reference, we're talking about that silver bracket, okay? So we're going to grab our T25, we're going to stick it on the end. We're going to set it in there. Okay, just like so. Set it somewhere you're not going to lose it. Okay. Now this connector, we don't need to pull off the harness. We can just remove it and locate it somewhere else. This one I'm going to tuck up here. Okay. Same deal on these ones. Lift up. Work on it a little, back and forth. There we go. And pull the connector back. They're a little bit tighter to work with back here, as you can imagine. Sometimes I do have a challenge with this style pliers getting in there, like I may right now. Again, push the connector back down. Alright guys, remember that tool I was talking about from earlier? The swivel tool? It's the only tool you're going to get your plugs in there and get them out with. Now, I have it on a locking swivel socket through Snap-on. That's the way I prefer to do it. Yes, sometimes you can get away with the straights. Okay? This is just easier for me. I'm going to explain why. Okay? The spark plugs sit, so I'll pull this out for you. Let's say the tube is straight. Okay, the tube's not straight. The tube is actually nearly an exact 45, but within that 45, the plug sits like this. Okay? There is no way, no matter what kind of 14 mil an extension you have, that you're going to make this angle. Okay? It's just, unfortunately, it's just not going to happen. You're never going to make that angle without this specialty tool. So I'm informing you of this because there's guys out there that think like, oh hey, I'm a DIYer, you know, I can rig something up that'll work for that. Well, you can't, I promise. The only way I can see this possibly happening is if you had a medium length, not a long and not a short 14 12 point that was hollow all the way through, and you had a swivel that was not bigger than that thin wall socket that sat about right here. It's a possibility you could get them out with that. But here's the thing, guys. Go buy the tool. It's on Amazon. CTA Tools makes it. Okay? I'm going to list the part number in the description so that you have the part number for this particular socket. So, do not start this job if you don't have this tool. Another thing too, this is again mid-job right now. I am pulling the plugs out. If you do not or are not comfortable with this level of disassembly on your BMW, don't do it. So, like I said guys, I start at the very back. So I'm going to start right back here, and you got to kind of rotate it and walk it back and forth until you feel it actually lock on to the socket. Okay, a lot of guys make the mistake, they feel tension on it and then they think it's on there, and then they go for gold and it damages the outside splines on the spark plug. So you want to make sure that is not the case. The other thing, when you're working in the way back corner, you may need to double up on extensions unless you like having your ratchet buried in there. That is completely up to you. Doesn't need excessive force, you just slowly break it loose. And sometimes if you're at a hard angle, it's not going to want to, so see how I'm pulling this back here? Okay. Now when you go back in, okay, don't just send the plug down and then try to force thread it, okay? You kind of have to make sure that it is at an angle when you're coming in, and then this has a little bit of tension on the swivel here, okay? So you got to keep that in mind. You got to slowly kind of hop it back and forth as you're walking it, and you'll start to feel the threads grab. But don't just send it down there and then start spinning like crazy, because it's a possibility you could either damage the spark plug threads or damage the threads inside the cylinder head. So just be careful about that kind of stuff. Alright guys, I'm going to cut this in too. There's going to be, and here I'll grab the light, there's going to be debris in the bottom of the spark plug hole. And what I would recommend doing, maybe help out the next fellow mechanic, is I would blow compressed shop air down in there and get all that dust out of there. Now what I'll do, I'll set this right in front of the hole and I'll blow so you guys can watch. See that dust coming out? Just do the next guy a favor and blow that out. That was a lot there. See that? Alright, I already blew the back bank. I just started putting them together and I realized that. But yeah, just do quality work. It's a quality vehicle. I left a pause there for a reason. Supposed to be a quality vehicle. No, BMWs aren't that bad. They're just very meticulous. So anyways, we're gonna start putting this back together now. All the coils go back in. Make sure when you're putting the coils back in that you seat the front of the coil in between this little window here. These detents, they have to be seated in there. One, that's how they go. Two, you'll never connect them if they're turned or whatever else. Well, you might, but they ain't gonna be making contact with the plug, I promise. So it's kind of stuff you want to pay attention to. Might be part of the same video, might not. I'm also going to show you guys how to do differential fluid services. Alright guys, to make sure that you seat this harness connector correctly. So there's a little detent on the bottom that sits under this ridge, but you got to start from this side. You send it up through this area that's extruded, and then you slide it this way so that it snaps into the pin on both sides, okay? So just make sure this is connected nice and tight, alright? And just like that, we are all done. So, I still got to put this shroud back on, just to kind of show you guys what these little 13s look like. I have decided to flip it over for you so you can see. So, that's what I meant by like 90 degree, a little past 90 degree turns, is when you turn these tabs come out and they lock.